Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Waiting to rise again.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Locking down the middle of the day. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Friday. It means we're brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. Hope that work week is in the rear view mirror. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Sally back there on the ones and twos. And fired up, you're closing out the week with us here. If that finish line's already here and you're headed down to do some Mardi Gras-ing, wherever that may be. Appreciate you locking us in. If you're still working, we'll get you to the finish line here. Just hang with us. Preston Guy in 15 minutes. We'll be talking some LSU football with him. I want to preview the entirety of LSU's baseball weekend in Frisco, Texas. LSU and Mississippi State on the hardwood. We'll briefly talk about that. Saints news from the Combine. Are they looking at tight ends? Might the fact that Matt Stafford is staying in L.A. help the Saints potentially move on from Derek Carr? We got plenty to do, and we are glad you are here with us. Start the same way we start every day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Let's start up in Frisco, Texas. LSU and Kansas State just less than 1 hour away in the Frisco College Classic. Tigers and Wildcats at 2 o'clock, and the lineups have been posted, and I want to kind of go through that here with you if you have not seen it posted to Twitter. For the second consecutive game, Garrett Curiel is going to hit leadoff, and he's going to do so against a left-handed starter for Kansas State. I think that's noteworthy, as you might imagine. After Wednesday's performance, he'll be followed by Jared Jones in the lineup. So Curiel and Jones are best two bats right there at the top of the order. This is where I think it gets really interesting, and I want to talk about this after I get through 1 through 9. Daniel Dickinson is going to hit third right there behind Jared Jones. He's been protecting Jones against left-handers for the first 3 weeks of the season, so that's nothing different, but I think it's certainly noteworthy. In the 4 spot, cleaning up will be Ethan Fry at DH. Luis Hernandez is the catcher. He will hit 5th. Stephen Milam is the shortstop. He will be in the 6th hole. Jake Brown is going to play right field against a left-handed pitcher. He'll be there in the 7th hole. Michael Braswell is the third baseman. He will hit 8. And Chris Stanfield is going to remain in the 9 hole. He will play center field. Cade Anderson will be doing the pitching. But I think offensively, this is a noteworthy thing for LSU, and I want to tell you why. I think it's very possible that Daniel Dickinson and Ethan Fry are two guys that can elevate this baseball team from good to great. Why do I say that? Because their ceilings are significantly high. You're talking about Daniel Dickinson, a Team USA guy, someone who could be a top 60 pick in the Major League Baseball draft, a guy that can run well enough to steal bases, a guy that's got enough pop to hit the ball out of the ballpark like he did on Wednesday. He's a toolsy player, and he can be an impact guy in the middle of the order. And Ethan Fry is the same way. 6'5". He's got a huge frame. He's got power. We saw that with the home run he hit against Southern a couple of weeks ago. And he swung the bat very well early on. For a team to win a championship, which is what we're in this for, right? When LSU shows up in February, we're talking about getting to Omaha and competing for a championship. That's just a standard that has been set here. And so we're going to talk about that. And to get to that point, you've got to have guys reach high ceilings. Let's talk about championship teams over 2 different sports that are recent that I think you'll all be able to recall very quickly. Let's talk about the 2023 team. You know Cruz and White have monster ceilings, and they reached them. Cruz hit 426. White hit 28 homers, drove in 100 runs, whatever it was. Like, they reached those ceilings. But you also had guys do everything they could do for that team. Gavin Dugas and Cade Beloso were as good as they could have possibly been for that team. Braden Jobert was phenomenal when they gave him opportunities to play. He didn't even play every day, and he hit a ton of homers. You got high-level play from everyone out there on that field, and they reached a lot of those high ceilings, and that's how you win a championship. Yeah, you can go to the 2019 LSU football team, and you can talk about Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, and yeah, that is very much a big piece to why LSU won. But I would also point to some guys that you may not immediately point to that reached their ceilings. Lloyd Cushenberry, Patrick Queen, Derek Stingley. Talking about Christian Fulton, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 3-star back, kind of sparingly used for a couple of years, explodes for 1,000 yards, carries them in Tuscaloosa. You got to reach those ceilings. And while I think you don't have to have 9 guys who are dominant players to win a championship, you don't. But you need to have some guys that can really perform at a very, very high level. And I think when you look at Chris Stanfield, Michael Braswell, Josh Pearson, those types of guys, the ceiling is not super high for those guys. That doesn't mean they can't be contributors on this team. Stanfield plays a really good center field. He runs really well. He can hit singles. He can handle SEC pitching. Michael Braswell was really good at getting on base at the end of last year. Now, those guys aren't going to slug. That's just the name of the game. Josh Pearson is not going to hit 340 this year. We have 3 years of sample size that suggests that. You've got some sure things. You know that Jones is a superstar with a super high ceiling. You know that Derek Curiel is showing some traits of these elite freshmen that we've seen come through this program for 30 years. You know Milam can be a star. But you look at the middle of that order, and if Dickinson and Fry are 300-plus hitters with 10 to 14 home run pop, and both can run a little bit, all of a sudden you look at this LSU lineup differently than I know that I did in January. And Jay Johnson is testing that. He's putting those guys in very consequential spots here in the biggest non-conference weekend that LSU will play. And they're right behind Jones and Curiel in the 3 spot and the 4 spot. And I was very open in January and early February saying, I'm going to need to see it from Dickinson. And we have not seen it from Dickinson in what I'm talking about. I'm talking about against SEC pitching. Well, you're not seeing SEC teams, but the guys you're going to see today and tomorrow could pitch in the SEC as starting pitchers. We'll talk about them at 1:30. I'm going to preview all 3 teams that LSU is going to play. We'll do that at 1:30. I'm purely talking about LSU here. But you're going to see fastballs in the low 90s, pretty good breaking stuff. It's not elite stuff. You're not seeing SEC aces this weekend, but you're seeing some quality stuff. And I'd like to see Dickinson perform. I know he can go to Utah Valley and hit 330 with 16 homers and 30 steals. I know that. I know he can hit Omaha. I know he can hit Purdue-Fort Wayne. So we won't know until probably 5 weeks from now what Dickinson could be. But he's off to a good start, and I like to see that. I didn't talk about Ethan Fry pretty much at all in the pre-conference because he's been here for 2 years. He hasn't really produced. He doesn't have a defensive position. And I just kind of thought that there were other guys that were going to play instead of Ethan Fry. I'm looking at Jake Brown. I'm looking at Ashton Larson. I'm looking at Josh Pearson, Chris Stanfield, Derek Curiel. Like, there are a lot of options there. And I did always add the caveat that Fry is right-handed, which differentiates him, especially on a day like today when you're facing a lefty. But I didn't talk about him much. But I got new information 2 weeks ago. He was playing all last year with a torn labrum. I don't recall knowing that last year. I've told you that a few times. Maybe I did, but I don't recall it. But now he looks healthy, and he told us in person last week, yeah, I wanted to play through it. It hurt when I swung. I couldn't take BP the way I wanted to. I had to change my swing. And for that reason, you're not going to produce. If you're not playing every day and it hurts every time you swing, you're not going to produce. But maybe, just maybe, in his 3rd year on campus, with a repaired shoulder and more frequent at-bats, the talent that we've thought was there with the size and the speed and the power, maybe that's unlocked. And I'm telling you, if LSU can still have a really good baseball team if Daniel Dickinson hits 270 with 6 home runs and plays good second base. LSU can have a good baseball team if Ethan Fry becomes a once-a-week player and Larson and Brown and Pearson take his at-bats. They can still be good. LSU becomes a lot better if Daniel Dickinson and Ethan Fry are 315, 320 hitters with 9 to 14 home run pop. And I'm not suggesting that that's out of the realm of possibility. It's unlikely, I would say, likely being better than a 50% chance to happen, better than a 70% chance to happen, but it's possible. And we start to learn about some of that stuff this weekend when you see LSU play some better teams. Kansas State's a better team than the 2 teams that you've seen on the weekends. Nebraska is a better team than the two teams you've seen on the weekends. Sam Houston's generally been a good program. This may not be a very good team. And if they lose 2 out of 3 this weekend or sweep this weekend, you still don't have a ton of information. Remember, LSU went on this same type deal last year to Rice for a midweek game and then to Minute Maid and blitzed everybody for 4 games. Looked awesome. I remember distinctly the lead I wrote for a column that was on Shay's site over on 3 that said, Houston, I don't see a problem. It was a corny lead off of an overused movie line, but I remember I wrote it because I didn't see really any issues with LSU's team at that point. I thought the starting rotation looked good. Thought the bullpen had a lot of arms. I thought the offense was balanced, had some pop, had some star power. I loved the way LSU looked, and they came out of the gates in conference play and went 3-12. The SEC is a different animal than what you see in the first 4 weeks of the season. It just is. So you won't know everything at the end of this weekend, but I do think it's a data point. And I'm so excited all season to watch Curiel and to watch Jones and to watch Milam and to see Jake Brown develop and all of that. But I'm telling you that those 2 guys that today are hitting in the 3 and 4 slots, Danny Dickinson and Ethan Fry, if those 2 guys start to bump up against that ceiling of what they can be as hitters, look out. They can be really good as a baseball team. I'm excited to look at it. We'll see coming up in 50 minutes, LSU and Kansas State from Riders Park in Frisco, Texas. I'll give a preview of the entire LSU baseball weekend coming up at 1:30. Incidentally, if you're not going to be here in 20 minutes or you just prefer the written word, I've got an entire preview up of the Frisco Classic at LouisianaSports.net. Got a preview of all 3 games, some things I'm looking at from LSU. Kate Anderson gets the ball for the Tigers today. I want to talk about that a little bit later on as well. So don't go anywhere. We're presented by Corks every single Friday. We'll talk with Preston Guy of TigerBait.com coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Of course, that was our Genesis opening drive, which is brought to you by Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisOfBatonRouge.com is where you can find their entire inventory. Every car that is on the lot is online at GenesisOfBatonRouge.com. I have said this quite a few times, but I worked in the insurance industry for 7 years, and I worked on car dealerships. And so I've been in a lot of them over the years. I've not been in one as nice as the new Genesis store at Airline and Pico. It is state-of-the-art. It is stylish. It's a great ambiance. It's comfortable. If you need to stop by the service aisle and you want to get some work done, you can absolutely do that. The Wi-Fi is great. Got a phenomenal coffee set up, snacks everywhere, and their staff is second to none. It's just a great, great place to spend a little bit of time. If you want to go by and buy a vehicle, they can help you out with that as well. Every car is on the lot is online at GenesisOfBatonRouge.com, but stop by at Airline and Pico. Talk to one of their brand ambassadors. Get behind the wheel, test drive that Genesis of Baton Rouge, and see the difference for yourself. It's the only fully exclusive Genesis dealer in the state of Louisiana. It's right here in Baton Rouge. Get on by Airline at Pico. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge, GenesisOfBatonRouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Our Friday show is brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. Check out the menu, corksfishandshrimp.com. You're heading out to a parade sometime over the next 4 days. Corks, happy to help you feed a big crew. They can do it. Their catering is fantastic. Just give them a little bit of notice. They're happy to have those big trays of crispy fried catfish, jumbo Gulf shrimp, crispy shoestring fries. It's all there at corksfishandshrimp.com. Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. Joins us every Friday, talk a little football. Preston, how are you?
All right, how's it going?
Going well. Wasn't going so awesome yesterday morning when I woke up and got the news that LSU's defensive line coach was headed down the road. Your reaction to Bo Davis heading to the New Orleans Saints?
Well, you know what's interesting about that? You saying it's bad news here. Aren't you also a Saints fan? I'm
not. I grew up in an anti-Saints household. I'm indifferent about the Saints. I hope they win, but I can't pretend like they get my blood pressure going on Sundays. I tend to fall asleep during the third quarter of their games.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So the reason I bring that up is it's overwhelmingly a negative that this is happening. And I'm like, well, aren't most of these LSU fans Saints fans? And most of them are just like, meh, the Saints are great, but we're upset that LSU lost their guy. And yeah, you should be. Bo Davis is an outstanding coach. Sad that, he didn't really get cooking in recruiting the way you would have liked to. Of course, I don't think he signed a 4 or 5 star out of the high school ranks in his 1 year here at LSU. So it would have been nice to give him some time and do that. But overarchingly, the continuity at that coaching spot for LSU for the last really 12 years has just been a revolving door. The last guy to coach that spot more than 2 seasons was Rick Haley, who was replaced by Ed Ogeron in 2015. You got to go back really far. It's been 11 guys in 12 years, and that's just anomaly. It's crazy because it's not just like management or a program. There's no one theme you can blame on that. It's 3 different head coaches with 3 different philosophies and 3 different ways of doing things, and whole different athletic administration. So it's not like a trait at LSU where there's a problem keeping this coach. But it does stink. My first initial reaction was, well, they got Kevin Peoples. Maybe they let him put the entire defense. They just go out and get the best possible coach. But after working the phone lines and talking with some people, LSU's going to go get a new D-line coach, and they have a lot of confidence in who it's going to be. They've got a few names lined up, and they feel good. They feel real good about getting a good replacement.
Yeah, I mean, it's a desirable job. You're going to pay $1 million or more for it. You got the ability to recruit great talent. And I gave a stat earlier in the week, I guess it was yesterday, that starting with Glenn Dorsey over an 8-draft span, LSU had 4 first-round picks on the defensive line, had something like 11 guys drafted, and since then they have not had a first-round pick, and you just haven't seen the talent level on the defensive front that LSU was enjoying in their heyday. How big a contributor is LSU's lack of championship-level success when you correlate it with the defensive line hasn't been as talented?
Yeah, and I think here recently defensive back talent produced in state has taken a back seat. D-line seems to take a dip before the defensive back, and a lot of that is mirrored by LSU's lack of success, is mirrored by the lack of prospects being produced in Louisiana. You think about guys like Glenn Dorsey, 30 minutes away, and it seems a lot of times the natural talent that LSU has runs right in line with what the state is producing. But realistically speaking, you might have to go out of state and develop some guys and that kind of stuff. Obviously, you got Dominic McKinley on board here, who is a 5-star guy. Maybe he developed something good, but yeah, no, they're going to have to definitely work on that. Success at high levels in college football is 100% contingent on the trenches, and both sides have had its issues. When LSU hadn't been good in recent years.
Let's talk about the position group that Bo Davis leaves behind. Pete Jenkins was on with Matt Moscone yesterday and said I left him a room that was completely bare. You look now, and there's some young talent. Jacobian Guillory is coming back. Do you feel okay about the talent level at defensive tackle moving into 2025?
Yeah, and then you got young guys. And you've got Dominic McKinley there as well. I think they're in a good spot, certainly better than they were a year ago. I don't think it's, quite, an ironclad room. It's not like someone's coming in and, I get to be, the coach of Glenn Dorsey or anything like that. But I don't think it's a gaping hole. What really becomes an issue here is this portal era now. You got to keep those guys on board, which means, you gotta go get a coach who's worth his salt that these guys want to play. You got to get them excited. So I will say this in terms of timing for losing a coach, it's actually pretty good because there's no portal that's open right now. There's not going to be a portal open until April. No signing day. No, they can't do anything to really leave for a while. And, NIL contracts have all been negotiated and set in stone. So timing won't hurt LSU a ton, but you do have to get someone because that spring window will come and you're going to want to, make sure they want to stay.
This is one that obviously you can't know, but is your sense that LSU will fill this before their first spring practice next Saturday?
I think so. I think so, but understand they're going to swing for the fences for some lofty names. I'm curious if Eric Henderson, the New Orleans native, who was, the D-line coach for the Rams when they won the Super Bowl and coaching at USC now, doing a great job, is that going to be the first name they call? Is he interested? He's, of course, got a co-defensive coordinator tag on him right now. So will Blake Baker be willing to do something like that? Think about guys like Dennis Johnson, defensive line coach for the Ravens, who was formerly the D-line coach here at LSU. Maybe would he be interested in coming back, especially as his career, he, continues to work his way up through the ranks. These are big, lofty names in desirable positions that would probably take a while to work through. But I got a sneaky feeling that, you give them full 7 days to do, their work. And, how long does it take? Hey, Blake, you okay having a co-DC? Yes or no? How long does that conversation take? But I don't know that they're necessarily in a super huge rush to do it just for spring football. That's the other thing. How much benefit do you get out of having him come in the first week of spring football practice versus the second week? I'd say it's more important to get the right guy in than a week of spring practice, or really all of spring practice. If we're being honest, it's more important to get the right guy than to get him here in a rush.
Is there a spring football storyline that stands out? But you got your coordinators back, which is usually a storyline about trying to install something that's brand new. That's not the case this time around. So how do you feel about this spring?
I think really the storyline is going to be, are these portal guys ready to be elite players? You got a lot of guys coming in from the portal who are going to have to play prominent roles. You didn't use the portal to just add depth. And it's like, okay, Andre Sam, if he comes in and can give you good reps, great. That's something, you weren't expecting. Yeah, now we're looking at guys like Patrick Payton, who if he's not your starting defensive end and a stud, you're disappointed. Guys like, Mansour Delane, where can he be CB1? Of course, and that also applies a little bit to Pickett, even though he's not a transfer. Is he going to come in and be good enough? So I think the eyes are going to be on the newcomers, and are they elite enough to help LSU become a playoff team? I think that's where my eye is going to go directly toward all spring.
Anything on the offense that piques your interest?
Anything on the offer? Well, that offensive line, I'm going to be curious to see, how they've retooled that and if they can keep Nussmeier upright, because as we saw last year, Nussmeier's not going to be running the ball a ton. He's going to have some time to pass, and by God, can they improve in run blocking? It couldn't be much worse, could it? But that's probably where I'll go straight to look at it. The offensive line. Okay, how does Braden Moore do at center, and Turner improve by scooting out? That kind of stuff.
We'll talk more about it next Friday. Have a great weekend, Preston. We appreciate the time.
See you soon, Hunt.
Preston Guy, TigerBait.com for all your LSU football coverage. They got you over there at TigerBait.com. Preston's with us on the Jim's Firearms Hotline each and every Friday. Next Friday starts Lent. So if you're starting to think about what you want to eat for those Friday lunches during the Lenten season, Cork's always a fantastic option. They're on Government between Foster and Jefferson. They bring you our Friday shows each and every week. We'll step aside. When we come back, I've got a preview for all three games coming up between LSU, Kansas State, Nebraska, and Sam Houston. We'll do that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. You do something for 30 years, you probably got a good idea what you're doing, and David Duvall and his staff certainly do. If you're looking at your bathroom, maybe you live in an older home, and you've got some situations with toilets and with showers where you've got rotting, you've got things that you really can't clean anymore. You've got to replace them. Well, David Duvall and his team are happy to come in and help you with that, and they can redesign your bathroom at the same time. Don't just call the neighborhood guy to come handle a serious plumbing issue in a redesign. How about go and get a master plumber with One Bath and Closets? They've got you covered right there. You don't want to take any chances. Go with someone who's licensed, bonded, insured, One Bath and Closets can handle that for you. They can handle it in the bathroom and do that in the closets as well. And everything that they do is going to be customized to your specifications, and they're going to do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. Get that free consultation today at onebathandclosets.com. Have David come sit down and tell you what he can do for you. If you're worried about finances, they can do financing 0% for 18 months, same as cash. Can't beat that if you qualify for it. It's One Bath and Closets. You can find them online, onebathandclosets.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
All right, LSU and Kansas State. 30 minutes from right now from Riders Field in Frisco, Texas. The Frisco College Classic, game one of a 3-game weekend for LSU. And I wanted to preview kind of the entirety of the weekend here before we kind of pass the baton off to the game broadcast over on our sister station, Eagle 98.1. Tigers played really well on Wednesday and kind of come into this riding a bit of a high. They got 13 hits on Wednesday, held Dallas Baptist to just 3 hits. I thought the defense was pretty good. Jaron Jones with the only error on a receiving error there over at first base. But you're stepping up in class and competition this weekend, not necessarily up to an SEC level. In fact, you're not, but you're stepping up just a touch. These programs are probably better in terms of the recent history, maybe than these teams are, if that makes some sense. I'll kind of tell you what I'm talking about. Like Kansas State last year made a super regional. They went to Fayetteville and won the Fayetteville regional. They beat Hagen Smith in the Saturday game, knocked him out of the game in 5 innings, scored 6 runs. Hagen Smith just didn't lose last year. He was unstoppable. Lefty throwing 99 miles an hour. And Kansas State stepped up there at Baum Walker and just started knocking him all over the place. They were really talented. They lost 7 of their top 9 offensive players from that team. So it's a bit of a rebuild, and it looked like it to start the season. They lost 3 of their first 4 games and did not look the part. But they got something cooking last week, especially on the mound. They swept 3 games from Arkansas, Michigan, and TCU, and in those 3 games, they only allowed 5 total runs. So really, really good pitching from the Wildcats. That started with Jacob Frost against Arkansas, and that's who LSU is going to see in 27 minutes. He's a 6'4" lefty, 230 pounds, started 8 games on the weekend last year for Kansas State and wasn't great. His ERA was 7.5. But he did have some good outings. He was 7 innings of a combined no-hitter against Cincinnati last year. And last week, I watched his start against Arkansas, and he got through 5 innings. And he had 6 strikeouts, had held Arkansas scoreless, really looked good from the left side. Fastball 92 to 93, and had Arkansas kind of baffled with the fastball. They got to him in the 6th. He gave up a couple of home runs, actually, to the Alloy brothers. There are 2 Alloy brothers on the team, and they both got him for a home run. Wahiba hit one to right field, and then his younger brother hit one to left. But he's a pretty good arm. Based on what I saw from Frost in the Arkansas game, he would start for a lot of SEC teams on Saturday or Sunday. That's kind of what he looks like. He's not an ace. I don't expect him to strike out 11 today against LSU. He's not the talent, that you saw from Brody Brecht from Iowa a couple years ago in Round Rock. He's just a quality arm that's certainly better than anybody that Omaha or Purdue Fort Wayne could throw out there. So LSU will see him from the left side. I think he's pretty quality. If Kansas State gets a lead today, you will very likely see Dante Lewis. Now, Dante Lewis is a true freshman. He's right-handed. He throws 97 miles an hour, and he would be an ace reliever for a lot of teams in the Southeastern Conference. He's got real legit stuff. He does play both ways for them. He will play some outfield. He is not in the lineup today for Kansas State, so he's ready to pitch. This is probably the scariest game for LSU of the weekend. That's probably too strong a word. This is the game that you're facing the best arm, best collection of hitters with the bullpen on the back end ready to go. So you need to, if you're LSU today, you need to get ahead. You don't really want to see Lewis out of the bullpen, and he can go extended innings. Dante Lewis went 4 innings against Michigan last week, and he did not allow a hit, and they were shutout innings. So that's not a guy that you want to see if you're trailing. So for LSU, key to get off to a good start today. So that's Kansas State. Going to see a good left-hander in Jacob Frost. Solid lineup that's missing a lot of pieces from a really good team last year, and then an ace closer coming out of the bullpen. Saturday at 4 o'clock, LSU will see Nebraska. And Nebraska's a program that's kind of built on pitching. Their pitching coach at Nebraska is Rob Childress. He's the former head coach at Texas A&M who did a great job with Texas A&M pitching while he was in College Station. LSU's going to see Ty Horn as the starting pitcher for Nebraska on Saturday. He's a junior right-hander, 6'2", fastball 93-94, another good arm who I think would probably be a back end of the rotation starter for some SEC teams. The breaking ball is okay, kind of slurvy. I didn't love what I saw from it. He's got 2 outings, 2 starts on the season against teams that you're pretty familiar with from a program perspective. He faced Vanderbilt out in Arizona to start the season, and then ULL last weekend. Against Vanderbilt, he gave up a leadoff home run. Then he gave up another run in the first inning and kind of settled in, but he only went 4 innings on opening day. 4 hits, 3 earned runs, 6 strikeouts, 2 walks in that outing. Against ULL, he got up to 6 innings pitched, allowed 2 runs. They were both earned, gave up 4 hits, struck out 5, walked 2, and gave up a homer. He's your garden variety Power 5 weekend guy. 93-94, decent breaking ball, right-handed, 6'2". Okay. He's not a high draft pick, not the pitcher of the year in the Big Ten, not any kind of dominant numbers, just a step up from Omaha and Purdue-Fort Wayne. And these are the kind of guys that I think it's a good step up. I don't necessarily need to see LSU facing Tyler Bremner from UC Santa Barbara, or one of these guys going to go in the top 20 picks in the draft this weekend. You're ramping up. So you want to go from facing Purdue-Fort Wayne to Omaha. You're ramping up one notch. I think you'll see similar pitching to this against Missouri. And that's your SEC opener. Once you start to face the real teams, the Texas A&Ms, the Arkansas, those teams, you're going to see better arms than what you are the first 2 days. But solid competition. Curious to see how that goes. Offensively for Nebraska, they haven't been great. They've got 2 regulars that are over 300 thus far. They've only hit 3 home runs as a team. What I will look at statistically with Nebraska that stands out, they run a little bit. They've stolen 12 bases. They're 12 of 14. And if Cade Arambidi is catching Anthony Ianson tomorrow, which he has the first 2 days, that may be something that they want to test. And Ianson's not a huge strikeout guy, so that you may see some traffic. Does Nebraska start to run on LSU on Saturday? That's definitely something that I'll be looking at. Then on Sunday, LSU will play Sam Houston, and that's a really good program. They were here in a regional in 2013. They were here in a regional a couple of years ago. This is a perennial solid baseball team out of the Southland / Sun Belt, and they're off to a rough start. They're 2-6 overall, and they lost 2 of 3 to the New Jersey Institute of Technology. Now, for reference, in losing 2 out of 3 to the New Jersey Institute of Technology, High Point played the New Jersey Institute of Technology for 4 games earlier this year, and High Point swept those 4 games by a combined score of 46-16. So I don't think NJIT is very good, and they took 2 of 3 from Sam Houston, who I mentioned is 2-6. So they've got Hunter Autry, who's off to a nice start offensively. He's got 3 home runs, hitting .333. He's driven in 10 runs. But what it looks like on Sunday is that LSU is going to have Chase Shores ready to go, and probably William Schmidt ready to go because he started on Monday, remember, and threw those 60 pitches. He would be ready to go on Sunday for sure if you want to use him. So you're talking about a Sam Houston team that is 2-6, that can't beat the New Jersey Institute of Technology, and they may show up after playing 2 games on the weekend, which may deplete their pitching on Sunday, and get some combination of Chase Shores and William Schmidt. That's what I'm talking about with this LSU pitching staff. Like, very few teams in the country. Some, I'm sure Florida can do this. I think from a velocity standpoint, Georgia can do this. You've got some teams that have got some stuff in the SEC. But as far as the teams that Sam Houston is used to playing, seeing those 2 guys show up on any day, much less a Sunday, is not a lot of fun. And I think LSU has a commanding advantage as we sit here today on Friday for this Sunday game. So that's kind of how I see this as a as a weekend as a whole. Anything less than LSU getting 2 out of 3 will be very disappointing. LSU went to Round Rock 2 years ago, got 2 out of 3, and you kind of felt a little disappointed they lost the Iowa game, but got it done, got 2 out of 3, came back home. LSU last year went to Houston, won all 3 games, and as I mentioned, 2 weeks later started one of the worst starts in SEC play in the last 30 years. So LSU's the class of this field for sure. LSU's got a better pitcher going today. They've got a better lineup than all 3 teams. You've got kind of a wash, I would think, in starting pitching on Saturday. And Nebraska's got some guys in the bullpen that can throw it, but LSU should be able to certainly keep up with them. And I think LSU's significantly better than Sam Houston. Here's the deal. I'd like to see the offense pop a little bit this weekend. You shouldn't be feeling like you're off balance because they're throwing some trick left-hander that throws 82 like some of these non-conference teams are playing. You don't have bad weather to deal with. It's perfect in Frisco today. I've gotten a couple of pictures from some people that are there. There's not a cloud in the sky. It's 75 degrees. The wind's blowing lightly. I'd like to see LSU ride the ball out of the ballpark a couple times. I'd like to see them score 7, 8, 9, 10 runs in a couple of these games. I would look for LSU to come out and play a crisp brand of baseball. This is the doldrums, generally speaking, for college baseball fans. The newness of the season has worn off, so it's not brand new, and you still have 3 weeks in terms of days to get to your SEC play. So this can be a doldrum spot for fans. However, you are stepping up in class. You're taking a trip. You're playing teams that have a little bit more brand recognition. I think LSU should come out sharp. I think they should come out playing very well, and I fully expect Cade Anderson to set the tone today. This is something that I talked about on Monday that I'm going to reiterate today. This is a hunch. It's something I picked up in the press conference on Friday of last week after Cade Anderson's start against Omaha. He was magnificent for 5 innings. He was throwing the fastball where he wanted to. His changeup was awesome, the best it's been since he's gotten to LSU. He mixed in some sliders as well. And then in the 6th inning, the command left him. And he walked 2 and he gave up 2 hits and he got pulled from the game and it ticked him off. He was not happy in the post-game interview room. And Jay Johnson said with a smirk on his face, like, I think he'll be pretty good next week. I think Cade Anderson in 15 minutes is about to torch Kansas State. And I'm looking for that, quite frankly, because I need somebody to step forward on this team to be an alpha, to be a dog, to be an ace. You need that. And Cade Anderson is being given that first shot. And through 2 weeks, he's been great. He was awesome in his first start, lost a little bit of fastball velocity there in the last inning, but did well. Was dominant for 5 innings last week and then lost the command. The stamina is the issue right now for Cade Anderson. I expect his pitch count to be up around 90, maybe exceed that today. And I think that should be good enough to get him through 6, maybe even 7 really good innings. I think he's going to be awesome in this game. And if he does that against the Kansas State team that swept through Arkansas and TCU and Michigan last week, I think that's certainly a step in the right direction. Doesn't guarantee anything. Blake Money was good in this spot 2 years ago. 3 years ago, I guess I should say. 3 years ago. And we know how that ended. But I think Cade Anderson has all the goods to be an ace, and it's about putting them together, and I think it starts today. I think he's going to be fantastic. I think the line's going to be something like 6 2/3, 10 strikeouts, 1 run. I think he's going to be great. And that's what I anticipate seeing in 15 minutes from right now. If you'd like to watch the games, you can stream via D1 Baseball. There's a promo code Kendall Rogers gave out on Matt's show yesterday. I used it earlier today, so I can confirm that it does work. It's LSU25. If you want to put in the numerals 25, LSU25, you put that in, you can save $10 on your sign up for the weekend over at D1 Baseball. If you'd like to listen, you can do that on our sister station, Eagle 98.1. For Saturday's game, I would imagine that's going to be on 100.7, the Tiger, with basketball being over on Eagle. So that gets you set up for the weekend to come for LSU. I think the Tigers win all 3 games. I think they sweep the weekend, but we'll certainly see as they crank things up in 15 minutes. We got 1 segment to go here in hour number 1. Come back with us, Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Look, every single vehicle in the line for Genesis of Baton Rouge has earned the honors for the IIHA top safety picks. Some of them were top safety picks plus. I know when you're purchasing a vehicle that one of the first things you're going to look at are the safety ratings. It's very, very important. And at Genesis, they want you to know that they are never going to cut corners in terms of safety. They're going to be one of the safest cars on the road. They're stylish, they're sleek, they're comfortable, they can be affordable. All those things are true, but safety is something they take very, very seriously at Genesis. If you've never gotten behind the wheel of a Genesis, I don't think I've seen that many Genesis. That's not uncommon. It's fairly new. Only been at that location, Airline in Piku, for about 2 years. Get on by and see them. Learn about the difference. Get behind the wheel with one of those brand ambassadors. If you don't have time to get to the dealership, let them come to you and remotely test drive from home or work. It's just part of the experience of being a Genesis driver. Check them out at Genesis Baton Rouge. They're online at genesisofbatonrouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Always enjoy Kim Mulkey press conferences. She's always got something to say and is always interesting. I think she's polarizing. Some people agree, some people disagree, but she always has something to say. And she has reached a point in her career where she can pretty much say whatever she wants. And you just got to kind of go with it. And I'm cool with that. But last night in Tuscaloosa, she's like, yeah, it was poorly officiated game. Too choppy, called too much. They're going to the video monitor. I don't know what they're reviewing. I don't know what they're looking at. One time they said they were looking at a potential throat punch that was 3 possessions ago. I don't know what they're doing. And I got a kick out of just the whole thing. I gleaned this from Kramer Robertson's answer to me on this show 2 weeks ago on opening day at the box. He came over. We chatted about his career, and then I briefly asked him on the air, like, Baum's got a big one coming up on Sunday. And it was about their trip to Texas. And he was like, yeah, it's regular season. If they win, not super important. If they lose, not super important. And I don't think Kramer came up with that on his own. I think that's just something that he's learned from his mom, who knows, as she's ascended to this spot in the sport, that, hey, it's really about what we do in March. It's about getting ready for March. We had Matthew Bruni on Tuesday. He said or Wednesday, kind of no matter what they do, they're a 2. If they lose to Ole Miss and then lose maybe the second game in the SEC tournament, they could slide to a 3, but he thinks they're probably locked in at a 2. And so no need to push a panic over LSU losing their 3rd game of the year on last night against Alabama. I think you look at this, and LSU doesn't shoot a ton of threes outside of Michaela Williams, but they didn't shoot it well last night, or a lot. It was 3 of 9 from 3. And you look at this, and I think 2 players on this team that LSU counts on in a big, big way did not have efficient nights. Flaugier was 2 of 12 from the floor. She was 2 of 11 from 2-point range. Like, that's very uncharacteristic of her. And then Nisa Mora, who is generally a very efficient player, and she did score 16 points in the game, but it took her 14 shots to get there. She was 6 of 14 from the floor. Like, it goes without saying with this LSU team. They can get by the first round and probably even the second round. But once they get to the second weekend, Flaugier, Anissa Mora, and Michaela are all going to have to play well. Like, that just is what it is. And when they don't, LSU will probably lose. And last night, 2 of them were not very efficient. And Michaela wasn't super efficient. She was 8 of 17. She missed 9 shots. But she canned a couple threes, and she had 22 points and 4 assists, so I'm not going to completely eviscerate her. But not that I'm eviscerating the other 2 ladies, but it's just one of those deals. You go on the road, and you play a pretty good team, which Alabama's pretty good. They're now 10-5 in the league. You need your players to play. LSU's not good enough from 8 to 12 on the roster to offset those ladies having a bad day, and they did. So no reason to sound the alarm. This is something we already knew. We already know that LSU's got a big 3. Those 3 are as good as anybody in the country. They've got to play good when you play those teams. And if you go on the road and those 3 are inefficient, which they were in this game, I mean, in total, let's see if I can do this math quickly. They were 8-4. That's 29, 43. 8 for 43. Sorry, 18 for 16 for 43. There's Hunt's math ability. 16 for 43. That's not efficient. That's not productive. That's a lot of missed shots. And LSU lost the war on the rebounding as well, 43-37. So just not a great day for LSU, and they were still on the road in overtime with a chance to win the game. Had a shot in the air late to tie it from Michaela that didn't go in. And Kim Mulkey was really happy with that look, said it was a good look. So not anything to sound the alarm over. LSU's got 3 losses. They lost at South Carolina. They lost at Texas. They lost at Bama. That's just part of life in the SEC. South Carolina's dealt with it. They went to Texas and lost. They lost to UConn. They went out west and lost. It's not a sport I think that's as top heavy as it has been in previous years. LSU's got a shot, but those three women have got to play a little bit better than they did last night. So no reason to sound the alarm. LSU falls to 27-3 with that 88-85 loss in Tuscaloosa last night. That's it for hour number 1. Always remind you that our Friday shows are brought to you by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Want a po' boy? Best po' boy in town. Big old delicious crispy fried catfish, jumbo Gulf shrimp, fully dressed on that delicious New Orleans style bread. It is awesome stuff over there at Cork's. And if you're looking for a po' boy, stop on by. You can drive through or eat in that renovated dining room. They bring you our Friday shows each and every week. If you missed any of the first hour, you can always catch it on demand. 1045ESPN.com's on demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound, you can always find us. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. You can like, subscribe, rate, review. We always appreciate that. Open the show talking about LSU's lineup in this ball game. I'm really, really excited to watch Ethan Fry and Daniel Dickinson in the, I guess in that case, 4 and 3 holes respectively, and see how they can protect Jared Jones and how they function against a little bit better pitching that LSU will see this weekend. So talked about that at 1 o'clock. Preston Guy talking some football. What does it mean for Bo Davis moving along? Got Preston's thoughts on that at 1:15. You can find that on YouTube at Hunt on LSU. I preview the entire weekend, so still time to check that out on demand, even as LSU gets underway here in 5 minutes, because I previewed the Saturday and Sunday games as well. We got a lot to do in hour number 2. We won't talk any baseball because they'll be playing baseball. LSU basketball against Mississippi State. Some Saints talk as well. Plenty to do. So I'm going to watch LSU baseball while we do that in hour number 2. We'll step aside for SportsCenter. We're back with more next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.